So hello, everybody. Welcome to the first JPEG NFT workshop. My name is Turaj Ibrahimi from EPFL. I'm the convener of the JPEG Standardization Committee. Very happy to be here. Since we have a very tight program, I would like just to quickly mention that we have three excellent topics, three speakers, plus one of our colleagues, Frederick Timmermans, who is a co-chair of this activity together with Kambis Obayunfar, who is going to first make a very quick presentation about what is really the background and the reasons we decided to have this first workshop that hopefully won't be only the first, but also there will be others that follow. There are three then presentations, one from Matthew Cuneo, who is going to talk to us about legal perspectives of NFTs. Then we have Ariel Dubois, who is going to talk about the art market and issues related to NFTs. And then we are going to have Domenico Rotondi, who is going to tell us about the centralized management of digital assets, in particular with the approach that is used with Mediaverse. Each presentation is going to take about 20 minutes, give and take, except for the first one that's going to be shorter. For all the presentation, I will suggest that you just keep your questions and even better, write them down in the chat window. When we get to the questions and discussions, we are going to go through them and then follow with some additional, brainstorming. The exception to that will be for the second presentation of today by Matthew, because Matthew, unfortunately, he cannot be with us for the questions and discussions. And so after his presentation is over, we are going to have a short, if there are any questions, a short time for him to be able to answer to the questions. Last but not least, this is being recorded, so I hope that I have the consent of everybody here for the comment. And if there is anybody who is not consenting, please let us know or just leave. The only thing that we are not going to record is going to be the last part, questions and discussion, because experience shows that people are a little bit more shy when things are recorded. So we stop recording so that this way everybody can just freely ask any questions they like. They don't feel any shyness, and the same for all the discussions that take place. That's all what I had. The last thing I want to say is that this workshop has been really the result of a lot of work by chair and co-chair, Kambis and Frederick, but also Fernando Pereira, who is the subgroup of requirements chair in JPEG committee. Now let's move to the first presentation by Frederick. Frederick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Turaj, for the introduction. And during this first presentation, I want to give you some background explaining why JPEG has initiated this new exploration on NFTs. So this is the outline of the presentation. So first, I'll quickly introduce some background on what NFTs actually are and what are the use cases, and also introduce what the challenges are that need to be tackled. Then I'll give some background on why JPEG is interested in this and what will be our next steps. So first of all, what are NFTs? NFT is an abbreviation for non-fungible token. So we can distinguish between fungible and non-fungible assets. Fungible assets are assets that are mutually interchangeable. So that means they're all the same and you can exchange one for another. Non-fungible assets, on the other hand, they're unique. So there's only one of them and you can transfer it, but you cannot interchange it for an equivalent. And that's, for example, like painting, similar to a painting in the physical world. Now, NFTs, what they do is actually provide an equivalent of non-fungible assets in the physical world in the digital world. Because along with digital certificates of uniqueness using smart contracts, and because it builds upon blockchain technology, it also has some of the same advantages, like building on a zero trust architecture, and as such bypassing the reliance on third parties. So here is a figure to illustrate that a little bit more visible. So in the physical world, you have real money, and in the digital world, you have cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. And then for non-fungible assets, you have paintings, for example, in the physical world, and for digital assets, we have NFTs. So it's really about bringing this notion of non-fungible from physical to the digital world, building up these decentralized architectures to enable zero trust digital asset transactions. And I already mentioned before that it makes use of smart contracts. That also opens possibilities for additional functionalities, so it's putting time on the transaction or other conditional rules. So maybe this rings a bell. This is an artwork called The First 5,000 Days by Beeble. And this is a gigapixel JPEG image that was sold as an NFT, and actually it was sold for $69 million. And this is just one example. In the first quarter of 2021, NFT sales hit the $2 billion mark. Here are a few other examples. So we have the gigapixel image sold for $69 million. Maybe that's still good value in terms of pixels per dollar. But on the right side, for example, you can see a meme. It's a 10-year-old GIF, which was also recently sold as an NFT for an amount of $590,000. And just recently, yesterday, actually, to be precise, the original source code of the World Wide Web, or at least part of it, was also sold as an NFT for a little bit more than $5 million. So these are just a few examples, and in the future, it's not only about this huge values. What we expect is that this will also trickle down to smaller transactions where pictures are sold for $20 or whatever amount between photographers and their clients. So the growth is really in the amount of transactions rather than just value. Here are a few other examples where it's not only about the digital asset, but there can also be a link between the physical world and the digital world. And on the left side, we have the Vern Banksy artwork. If you remember that during an auction, the artwork, the physical artwork itself, burned itself basically. So the only thing that is left now is the digital version, and there again, that has been sold as an NFT. What you see on the right side is what's called an ABBA chair, and there it's the other way around. So this is an object that first was created digitally as a 3D object and was then sold as an NFT. But with the NFT, there was also an actual physical model made of that chair that was sold along with it. And the last one was already an example of a 3D object, and here are a few others. What you see on the right side are 3D sneakers. It's actually the 3D objects which are sold as an NFT, and then using augmented reality, you can make a video like the one presented here, like if you would have them on your feed. The one on the left side is a virtual Mars house, Again, sold as an NFT, but what's interesting here is that the ID came from Kista Kim, but the actual model was made by somebody else, Matteo Sans Pedimonte. And that also led later on to some discussions about the actual rights of that transaction. And that leads us to some of the challenges related to NFTs. So first of all, there's a lack of interoperability between different solutions which are currently offered for NFTs. So you have multiple alternative services that provide you to sell something as an NFT, but they're not necessarily compatible with each other. And that also leads to concerns about the long-term viability and reliability of these NFTs. In addition to that, there's still a lack of security, and in particular, between the link between the certificates and the actual digital asset. So there is a clear need for best practices, in particular on handling these digital assets and linking them with the transaction. Then there's also challenges related to the storage and preferably decentralized storage of the actual assets. And then finally, there's also challenges related to the legal aspects. I just ended the previous slide with just one example of that, but there's also privacy issues to take into account and so on. So that will be one of the topics for the presentations later during this workshop. So why should JPEG pay attention to NFTs? Well, the first example that I showed was already a JPEG image. So many of the digital assets in NFTs are contents that are represented in JPEG formats, and this can be 2D images, but also any of the other current or upcoming JPEG formats. So there clearly is a need for a media-related metadata and also mechanisms to protect that metadata. And within JPEG, we already had previously ad hoc group or an exploration on media blockchain. And this is yet another example of an interaction between blockchain DLT and imaging or media applications. And then in general, there is a need for a media-aware and network-agnostic international standards for NFTs. So our focus within JPEG will, of course, be on the media aspect and the integration of media within such an ecosystem. But also in general, there is a need for international standards to ensure this interoperability between all these different services. Within JPEG, we already have some background that actually led to this initiative. So one of them is the JPEG Universal Metadata Box Format, or JUMF, which is a systems standard that allows to embed any type of metadata within images and also reference it within the image itself, as also from outside the image. Then we have JPEG Privacy and Security, which allows to protect metadata and also like regions of interest in an image. As I already mentioned previously, we had an exploration on media blockchain, and that exploration then in the end led to another exploration on JPEG Fake Media that is currently still ongoing, where we focus on the need for standards to facilitate secure and reliable annotations of media assets creation and modifications. And even though fake media has some negative connotation, the focus of that exploration is really on both good faith as the malicious intent use cases. So what are the next steps for JPEG? So first of all, we have to explore and analyze what the state of the art is in NFTs, and then in particular related to digital assets. And then even more in particular, of course, we're most interested in these represented in user by any of our JPEG formats. Based on these analysis, we have to identify what the use cases are and what the requirements for a potential standard would be. And to identify these use cases and to identify these requirements, it's important that we interact with stakeholders and stakeholders with an academic background, but also from the industry and also from the end user communities. And to that end, we're organizing these workshops. This is the first one, but very likely we will have additional workshops in the future to achieve these goals. And then in the end, once we have these use cases and once we have these requirements, it will be our task to make a decision if we have to create a new standard related to NFTs. And even if it's not a standard, then it may be some best practices on how to handle digital assets in NFT ecosystems. So that's it for the introduction and why JPEG is interested in this this topic. So now we can move to the real presentations of our guest speakers. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I think for the interest of time, since we have already something like 5 minutes delay, I would like to invite Matthew to share his screen and also present himself before starting.
Okay. So, thank you, Professor Ibrahimi, for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to discuss with you here, and I think it's really important to address the standard issue related to JPEG and NFT and the junction between both of it. And I've seen that JPEG had already a lot of existing standards that could be implemented directly on to NFTs in terms of metadata, and I think it's quite interesting also for the privacy aspects. So, well, that's great. To present myself, my name is Mathieu Quignou. I'm a lawyer in Paris. I'm a partner of a law firm called Legal Brain, and I'm also a researcher in ICT at the University of Paris 8. And I will talk about the NFT with a legal perspective. So we already seen several situations where it was quite difficult for company and for artists to understand what it could be in terms of transfer of property, IP rights, and also the question of transfer in terms of contract law. So mainly, well, NFT can be considered as certificates, and as you told, it's also a question of scarcity. Mainly, well, what we can say is that NFT, when it's done on the blockchain, because you can also maybe have NFTs on CBDCs, the digital national currency. I've seen projects that propose NFT on this kind of new digital money, but mainly at the moment it's on blockchain, on Ethereum, on other protocol like Tezos. And we've seen that, well, before NFT, we already had systems that can timestamp IP on blockchain by sending hashes on the blockchain of maybe a Canva or a photo or whatever. And it was a way to digitalize a system called envelope solo, which is quite well familiar for French practitioner of law and also for artists and designer, in order to protect and prove the anteriority about an artwork. So it's quite important in terms of proof when you've got to sue someone for counterfeiting or something like that. So NFT, well, you tell it before, it's mainly about metadata and the way you can integrate it into a blockchain and exchange this NFT. Because when you are on a peer-to-peer system and you are in a decentralized system, when you send something, you keep also a copy of it. So it's a duplication. With NFT, you send something and you don't keep it. So that's the main difference. It's also the case with Bitcoins, but now it's for digital assets with these NFTs. So you've got a certificate in a way that is inside the blockchain and that can tell that it was created at this moment. But in terms of IP law, it's not enough. You just can't have only a smart contract in order to transfer IP. I will explain it more precisely just after that. In a way, NFT is a new way to understand scarcity on the web. Before, the main philosophy about the way content should be used on the web was mainly about Creative Commons systems, when you just said how the user can use your content, if he can use it in a commercial way or not, if he has to present your name on the photo, keep it, etc. So you had several systems like that can differ a bit from what was used in terms of author rights. And you also had DRM, digital right management, that were integrated, for example, on software and also on CD-ROM, etc. Well, it's still used, but not as much as before. And the main reason is because business models are quite different and monetize other things now. And NFT permits a new way to monetize the content and the creations because it goes directly to the scarcity system, which is the physical system in order to monetize the artworks. Especially for digital artists, it's really interesting because they didn't have any canvas, virtual canvas. In a way, it can be considered also as a virtual canvas, maybe. So in order to deal with this issue legally, we have to understand that the NFT and the smart contract creating the NFT, which is, well, a token, non-fungible token, but still a token created by a smart contract, is quite different from the contracts that you use in order to permit someone to go for merchandising or to give license to your API, right? So you have to integrate also this more classical contract into the NFT in order to have some contract which is not void and to transfer something, because otherwise you transfer absolutely nothing, just a token, just a smart contract without anything in relation to it. Even if you have a JPEG on the metadata that is related to it because you've sent like an IPFS address and you are, well, integrating that into the metadata, it's not enough. You also have to integrate in the same way a contract. It can be a PDF, for example. But the smart contract is still really interesting because you can automatize several things that are normally executed differently with classical contracts. I think of resale rights that can be paid automatically. Once you have a smart contract, you can decide when you are the author, the artist, to say, for example, it's 10% if you resell my creation and make a profit. You will give me 10%, etc., etc. It already exists in the French system, for example. You've got resale rights. It's legal, but it's generally less money that can get. It's basic percentage of the resale, and in many countries it doesn't really exist. For example, in China, in the US, there are no resale rights, legal resale rights, and the resale rights in the NFT system with the smart contract is a contractual resale rights. It's quite different from the legal one. You can decide and choose a parameter you want. You can decide the percentage. It's not the case with the legal resale rights. So it's quite new, interesting, and in a way, it's a peer-to-peer system of assigning IP rights and giving licenses. So what are the use cases that I've seen for the moment? Are also trying to, well, not only dealing with the virtual worlds and dealing with JPEG, it's also trying to make like a kind of crossroad between the physical world and the virtual one, using chips on the works, or like NFC chips, RFID. There are also a question of integration of this physical metadata in the NFT in order to localize the assets. And there is also a question of location and tracking of the physical assets by the way you generally use sensors, and in the blockchain field is called oracles. The objectives of this system is to monitor the authenticity, to facilitate the resale, because sometimes, well, for example, in Switzerland, you've got a per franc, and for example, it's easier to deal with this kind of physical goods when you know exactly in which place it is, without making a transport and having a special condition in order to transport it. And with this kind of digital way to deal with it with this kind of sensor, it's easier for people. You also have the question of insurance and transfer of responsibilities that is still undergoing with this kind of NFT on the real world. So now for the legal consideration. Generally, when you deal with tokens, well, it really depends on the territory and the national law for sure. But we consider that once you sell tokens, a utility token, you have to do white paper. Once you have a number of subscribers which is higher than, well, it depends of the country, but in France it's 150 subscribers, you have to do white paper, and you have to follow a regulation which is called French Pact law, which is a quite new law in France, and we will soon have also an EU regulation on crypto assets, which is called a MiCA. And also you will have a white paper obligation, and you have to send the white paper to the regulator, to the authority, like well, in France it's called the AMF. It's the equivalent of SEC in the US, for example. And in this white paper, you also have to share the risk and to explain it and to give guarantee to the subscriber and to describe the token. So you can describe if it's a physical good or JPEG or well, Canva or whatever, you can describe it, and you can give also guarantee. And if you have inside it, maybe decided to integrate IP rights in the system, then you have to explain it precisely. But it's only for, well, big numbers of subscribers, so it's not always the case. Currently, the platform are not, well, following this system for the moment. We'll have certainly clarification by the regulators soon. As you've seen, it's a 2 billion euro market, so it's becoming quite huge. So certainly regulator will look at it more precisely. A question is the legal qualification of this token. Is it a security token? Is it a utility token? Is it all the same? In a US legal perspective, I think the security token might be a real problem for NFTs, especially if you had an IP transfer. Because some of you know, we already had system like that in the US, like Bowie bonds, and in Bowie bonds we've got bonds, so it could be considered as a security. I think in France it's, well, more or less the same thing, but the appreciation of security is less hard. We don't have the OA test it's more about knowing if it's a financial instrument. So, well, it's easier to be inside the utility token category in France. So we can, well, there is still discussion about the qualification, and it also depends of what you integrate into this NFT in terms of contract. You also have in this kind of regulation obligation to identify the author, the person that mints the NFT, and an obligation for the consumer to disclose several information about him. It's called the KYC, and you also have more important obligation related to anti-money laundering obligations. So it can become, well, quite expensive to make this kind of protocol integrated into the system. And sometimes people on crypto field don't like to disclose their privacy, don't like to disclose their personal data. And there are also obligations related to the secondary markets. Like, well, in France, it's called PSAN. It's, well, competent platform that can deal with digital assets. Well, let's call it that way. It's a label that is given by the financial authority, and it also exists in many countries. You know, well, sometimes different way, but it's the same idea behind that. In terms of IP law, which is a core aspect in the legal configuration, you have to verify that there are no previous work that is covered by IP rights when you mint an NFT. There is also a difference between IP rights, which means like copyrights, plus in civil law systems like France, moral rights, which is, well, the right, for example, not to transform the painting or things like that. There is a difference between IP rights and the right on the support of artwork, so canvas, for example. When you pay for a canvas in an auction, you don't pay for the IP rights. You just have an exception. You just can, well, keep the canvas at home and share it in a private group, but you don't have the right, for example, to share the painting on an advertising stuff or on a T-shirt or whatever. You also can transfer merchandising rights. And there is also a difference between assignment and license. It's mainly about the length, well, the duration of the contract, and the possibility to have exclusive assignment and non-exclusive license, even if license can also be exclusive. So it's a real issue, and, well, the idea is you can integrate this kind of contract into the metadata of the smart contract of the NFT, in the same way you integrate the JPEG address of the painting or of the artwork. You also have a question of consumer law. It's not the other question, because you have a lot of exceptions that already existed for JPEG or MP3 on other platforms like Spotify or whatever, once you are on Apple. So it's quite easy to not have to follow the right of retractation, for example. But for the expression of consent, it's a real issue, because you have to disclose this kind of condition of sale in order to have a valid contract. So it's one of the reasons why you have to share it at the good moment. Otherwise, it's void. I will give some perspective about the minting system. So this is, for example, the way you mint an NFT on, I think it's OpenSea or Rarible, I think. So you've got, for example, you choose the file, you fix the price, you've got a description, a title, but you don't generate a contract. You're just giving several information about the NFT and the artwork you've done. You decide the royalty, but, well, in a way, it's just inside page, a digital page. It's not on a contract that can be signed, or is legal binding for the author or the person that means. So it's quite different. Currently, I'm working with other person like Julien Béranger, which is was here listen to the presentation. We are working on Atto, which is a proposal of tool, which is really at the moment under construction. The idea behind that is to create a minting platform built on Ethereum that permits the personalization of IP right licensing integrated into the NFT. So I will share with you a short video. And so as you can see, you can choose like a JPEG like that on the platform. Then you take it there, like on OpenSea, you decide the name of the artwork, quite close, the author, and then that's the most important aspect in a legal way. You decide the rights you are sharing. There you can decide the intensity of rights you are giving the license to. So you can decide, for example, to the resale rights, the logo rights, the secondary exploitation, etc. That can be integrated. So like it's really classic there. And then you will see we're generating also a PDF, which is a contract. There you've got a contract, which is a license contract that is integrating the assignment of the token of the NFT, and also the license of the artwork integrated into the NFT. And it's the idea is to let the user parameter this one. He can also directly implement his own contract, his own state conditions, but he also have the possibility to make a direct implementation of what he decided when he minted the contract. So you will have it directly integrated into this specific model. So that's all for me, and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mathieu. Since I understand you won't be able to be in the last session when we discuss, we're going to ask you maybe a couple of questions. We have time for that. There is already a question in the chat window, so I'm going to start with that one. This is from Kambis, and he's asking, how can multiple owners of a physical asset, for instance, an inherited painting owned by a brother and a sister, issue an NFT for the asset?
Okay, well, it's not really difficult. Well, you just have to sign a contract with all the owner and decide to create an NFT. You can also decide to give the rights to someone to represent this group of people that are the co-owner of the painting, and to ask him to generate an NFT and decide, well, the percentage you will get. So it's not really a problem. And you can also decide to create multiple NFT on the same artwork, on the same physical work, and to share it between the co-owner. It's also an idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so today I will be speaking about the NFT and the art market. So the goal of my presentation, so next slide, is to demystify, how NFTs challenge and benefit the art market. The goal is to have a brief overview of all the current creative processes that are happening in the art market, and to understand how NFTs are shaping new collecting behavior. So it's not really a technical presentation, it's more like a practical presentation to understand really what is behind all of the not the hype, but the movement of the art market and the NFTs. In terms of presenting myself, so my name is Ariel Dubois, and I'm a junior associate at the law firm Briner Brunisols in Geneva. We specialize in tax law, business law, and art law. And myself, I'm involved in the art market on the side. I'm the co-founder of Are Art Agency, which aims to promote and support emerging artists. And in terms of educational background, I have studied law and as well history of art and worked in both sectors. So it's more like, so NFTs and the art market, it's really like sectors that really have a relationship that I really enjoy doing. So voilà, just to present myself briefly. So if we go into the presentation on the 4th slide. So when we think about the art collector today, we think like of the traditional art collector. So it's a collector who goes and buy like a beautiful like painting, large scale painting, and put it on the wall of his house or of his offices. Or next slide, like he buys like great like sculpture. So it's all about physical artworks. When we think about it, it's like the personification of art collectors. But the important thing is that the narrative in 2021 has changed. I mean, yesterday there was a report that has been published by Artsy, which quoted, in 2021, every art collector is an online art collector. The data, if we compare, like in 2019, online sales accounted only for 9% of the entire art market. So only 2 years ago, I mean, even pre-pandemic period, people, when they wanted to buy artworks, they were going to galleries, they were going to art fairs. It was really like a physical presence. So you will tell me at the end, NFTs, it was not really the question, because why do you want to own something digital? I mean, I'm talking for like traditional art collector. It's like part of the events of the life of a collector to enjoy going to this kind of events. I mean, galleries openings, buying from a art dealer, all these kind of third parties at the end relationship. To illustrate this argument, I've just put like a print that I bought myself on the website of Amber Victoria, who is like a New York-based artist. And I have it in my living room, but I bought it directly through her website. I mean, so this like shows that now I don't go like in the gallery that represent Amber Victoria. I go online and I buy these artworks, physical artworks that I receive by the post, but for like my living room. So this is one part of the online art collector. But if we go a bit further, myself, I really like this print. I mean, the digital the digital graphics of this print, and I would like maybe to have it on my screen, like to have the ownership of this graphic design, this illustration on my screen, and be able like to show it everywhere and not have it like only limited in my living room. I mean, on the walls of my living room. So this is where NFT comes and makes things interesting. However, today, still, I mean, in 1st July of 2021, when I speak about NFTs to collectors, traditional art collectors, so I'm speaking back to like the people who have like beautiful artworks in the living room, like physical artworks. When I speak about NFTs, they say, yeah, but at the end, NFTs are nothing more than high-fidelity JPEG files. Well, it can be, but not really. I mean, really, if we go a bit further and if we follow Matthew's presentation that he just gave beforehand, and then if we follow the definition, an NFT is a unique digital certificate that is stored on a blockchain and provides digital record of ownership rights. The associated asset can be either physical or digital. So I'm not going to really explain this definition because I think Matthew did it very well just before me. But it shows that at the end, if we relate to the art market, so I'm on slide 10, you have like, you can be the owner of a digital content, and that changes everything in the art market. Because for now, you can only be like the owner of like a painting, a sculpture, something physical that you cannot really hold. But artists having at the end producing like videos, illustration, graphic design, even having pictures on their screen, hologram, I mean VR and AR images. But who was like, the commerciality of them, of like, I mean, to sell them and to have like a commercial like behaving, it was very difficult. So NFTs at the end, they are the solution to this. So the goal now is to like like really understand and to go behind, you know, what is a digital artwork in terms of like the art market and how it is changing. So just to clarify, a digital artwork is all the artistic content that is continuously viewed on computers, networks, or through technologies. It's not a new medium. This medium has been existed in the 50s, and at the end, it's all the artworks that have that are created through technology and coding. So it's everything that we see on our screens, and we spend our days on screens looking at things. So finally, we are constantly in front of digital artwork, but we don't really realize it. So this is just to state. If we go on slide 11, I've put like 2 links. I don't know if you can click on them or not, but if you click on the link from Team Lab, and I don't know if it works, but if it works or not, I mean, Team Lab is like it's like a Japanese artistic group, and they create like interactive art. And until now, I mean, and still now, I don't know if they do any NFTs, but the only way to experiment their art was to go like in a museum that they have in Japan, in Tokyo, or like in special exhibition they organize worldwide, and the viewers, they were like interacting with their art. And this kind of art is like video art, and you want this at the end now, I think, with all the technology that we have in our possession, in your living room. I mean, you don't really want only like a painting or like a sculpture. Maybe you will want to have this kind of like interactive artwork when you invite your friends at your place, not really your friends, but even yourself when you sit on your sofa, and you want to interact with art and like experience a different feeling. And with an NFT, if they put some NFT, that means they could like commercialize, I mean, this kind of videos and, I mean, interactive art, and people could buy it and have them in their living room. So that's kind of a big, you know, big change, big innovative, new commercial opportunity, because at the end, people are confronted to new kinds of new mediums. So it really makes sense. But voilà. So if we go, and it's not that we are limited only to go to museums or to like artistic or cultural institutions to see them. I mean, now we need to, we become more and more like, we have the desire to do things by ourselves, not really to depend on something. And, I mean, I have a third party, like a third party in between. So it makes sense. So I mean, the NFTs and the video art, I think it's the solution. So if we go on slide 12, what I said that the purpose of collecting is to be able to own rare items. So it's true that now with an NFT on your digital artwork, you can collect digital art. You don't just need to see it in a museum. You can have a portfolio of it. You can really be the only owner of it, or not really. I mean, it depends how many owners there have been, but well, it's another question. But the artworks, I mean, the digital artwork become like unique. The scarcity and authenticity are guaranteed, and this makes sense. But I think Mathieu explained it very well in his previous presentation. So 2021, and on slide 13, it's like every day there's a new, like, it's like happy NFTs, that's what I said. That means that every day there's a new article, there's something new happening in the NFT world, and especially in the art market. So it's kind of quite intense to follow what's really happening, but it's a new world. And if we compare to like the traditional art market that has been like established since centuries, but if we like target the contemporary art market, so more than 60 years, well, nothing is comparable in terms of changements. I mean, like in 1 year, or not even 1 year, but like in 3 months, or since March, everything is changing. Like you have galleries adapting, you have artists like blue chips artists that normally paint, that are doing digital content. It's like the revolution in the art market. But however, despite the hype, so I'm on slide 14, Artsy, the art collecting report of Artsy just stated that despite the hype, NFTs is still very niche. Indeed, there is only 5% of all the like art collectors that completed the survey that had purchased an NFT in 2021. So we speak a lot about this, but at the end, only 5% of them buying like NFTs. It's quite like few, even if the prices and everything is impressive, but in terms of data, it's kind of limited. My belief is that at the end, it's because it's a misunderstanding. People don't understand what is like NFTs relating to art, or they have a wrong impression. So that's why I think it's important to break this fake understanding. So if I go on slide 15, we see the CryptoPunks. So the CryptoPunks, when I speak to traditional art collectors about NFTs, they say, "Oh yes, you are speaking about the CryptoPunks, you know, the kind of emojis." Well, in terms of like aesthetic of art, it's true. It's a different style. It's a different medium. It's a not medium, but aesthetically speaking, it's very different from a painting, abstract painting. But well, it attracts different kind of buyers, and it attracts a new generation as well. But let's not be limited to CryptoPunks. In terms of style, there is as well, if you click on this Vimeo website, but I don't know if you will, but I can describe it to you. It's like a kind of a augmented reality. It's two people like embracing, and it's like it's lively, it's really nice, and it's really changed. It's like a revolutionary artworks. I mean, it challenged all perspective that we could have about an artwork. And at the end, now this is an NFT that you can buy on a platform that is provided by the art gallery, which is called Unit in London. And it makes sense because at the end you can possess these artworks. It may be in your living room next to your abstract artwork, but very differently. But that means you will need different kind of like displaying materials. If you go on slide 17, I've written down that there is this firm which is called Acute Art, and they have been working since I think 4 years approximately on VR and augmented reality art. So they've dragged along like very important artists, like for example Marina Abramovic. There is as well Coros, and a lot of different of them, and they created an app where you can in your living room. If we go on next slide, you can see Co's carves. I never know how to pronounce it. It's my French accent, but you can see these artworks everywhere you are. So it's like an augmented reality thing. But they didn't put any NFT on it. But let's imagine and let's dream together that you can be like the owner of this like augmented reality version of Chaos sculpture. I don't know what's the name. And you can have it effectively in your living room all day and all night, I mean forever, and that you have forever. This is subjective to well the blockchain technology. This is a different question, but well, if we go on slide 19, not to conclude, but just to say that at the end, NFTs are the solution for like collecting digital artworks. It promotes the medium of digital art, and in the same time, but importantly, it brings new business opportunity to the art market that was just said, you know, a bit like dying, not dying, but like a bit too traditional and very closed. If we go on slide 21, we see the Samsung TV, the frame. So this is the first one of the many business opportunities that have been created. It's Samsung, the brand, that have created the TV, the frame, where you can buy actually digital artwork that we see like the bridge on the picture. And while your TV screen is shut down, you can see this digital artwork that you have bought. And funny or not, I mean, not funny, but this shows the big changement in the art market. The big change is that Sotheby's at the end and Samsung TV, they have a partnership now. So they partner like to sell NFTs, digital artwork. So this shows the business opportunity that is happening right now. So if we go on slide 22, this is just a brief recap of what has changed in terms of the major actors of the art market. So first of all, let's not to speak too much about them, but it's still very important. Christie's and Sotheby's, who are the main auction houses in the world dedicated to high-end arts and selling high-end arts. Well, I don't want to say, but like since 2 months, both of them, I think, They are like they're accepting cryptocurrency. They have like digital NFT art sales. They have like adapt to this kind of market. So this shows that it's changing. For example, for the PAC, which is an artist auction that Sotheby's organized 2 months ago, there have been 3,000 buyers of this little cube. It's not one compared to one by T, it's 3,000. So it's kind of impressive. And after, when you go to the art galleries dedicated to digital art that I've put, you see there's the Dam Gallery in Berlin, which is a well-established gallery that has been doing actually this kind of business since 20 years, but now it's working, it's funny. There's Gazeli Art House in London, dedicated to VR art and promoting VR artists. And there's Kate Vass Gallery in Zurich that has opened 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and that is one of the leaders in the market. And in terms of platform, Mathieu has spoken about them, and it's where you buy majority of the artworks. But well, if you go on page 23, we see that even traditional museums, like for example the Uffizi galleries in Florence, have sold NFTs version of their Botticellis. I mean, so it's not only like art for CryptoPunks. I mean, it's like the Botticelli. You can have a digital version of it. I mean, this is a digital twin, but still, it's kind of impressive what's happening. If we go on slide 24 rapidly, we see Conan Gallery. It's a well-established and that works very well commercial gallery based in Berlin. And since April, I think they have created online, not an online gallery, but a gallery on Decentraland, on the metaverse. So I'm going to leave it here because we have a presentation following on the metaverse. But the gallery is adapting and it's selling NFTs, but normally it's just like it's just selling, you know, paintings and photographs and sculpture. But like in 1 month, it has adapted and it has its own NFT platforms just to show. So if we go on page 25, we see the exhibition that is currently on the Decentraland gallery version of Koning. So voilà. So yes, if we go slide 27, this is the kind of, however, this is the issues that need to be fixed. And me, myself, I believe that NFTs needs to become NFAs. So non-fungible tokens need to become non-fungible assets. We need to have the ownership of the digital art directly and not of the token that links it to the asset. It needs to be the asset. And I've seen that there is a couple of blockchain that have been created right now and have not yet been I think I women I think it's time to question connection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ariel. We try to fix the audio, hopefully in 20 minutes or so that we can interact with you. Very, very interesting slides. Thank you very much. Opened a lot of very, very interesting horizons for us. I like the idea of NFA instead of NFTs. But for the interest of time, I propose you take a rest and maybe offline we try to fix your problem with the with the audio, and then in 20 minutes we're gonna start with the session. So in the meantime, I would like to invite Domenico to please share his slide, and then, you know, like the other two speakers, please present yourself first, and then we will have a pleasure of listening to you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
We also see your slides. Everything is
okay. Okay, good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for inviting me to this interesting workshop. I'm Domenico Rotondi from Fincons Group. I'm a senior business analyst in Fincons. Fincons is an IT company. We just develop software, and myself, I'm in the research division, and I work on research activities since a lot of years. So my presentation will be focused on presenting how in European Horizon project we are addressing the issues related to media, digital asset management in the media sector, and specifically IPR management. And so I will spend a few slides just introducing the Metaverse project, and then I will go more in details in the approach that we are following. Okay, so Metaverse is a Horizon project that has started last October, so we are just in the initial phase of the project. The project will last 36 months. We are 11 partners. You can see where are located the different partners. And we have a total effort that is around 750 man-months during the 3 years. Okay, so what is the vision and objective of Metaverse? We are taking into account that the landscape in the media sector is changing. We have boundaries, the traditional boundaries between media companies, consumers, producers, and so on that are vanishing. And so we need the new approaches and tools for addressing this more dynamic environment. The speed of communication are increasing, and so the creation and exchange of digital asset is becoming faster and is also increasing. And also the end users are asking for having more easy to use tools for creating their own multimedia assets and have also other kind of experience like virtual reality and so on. So the Metaverse is trying to set up a decentralized network that provides a set of tools and facilities for making more easy to both access digital assets and also to manage these digital assets, for example, for enhancing them or creating new digital assets. So at the end, what we will provide is a facility for sharing digital assets to enrich digital assets, to verify and assure the ownership and rights regarding digital asset and monetize. And we also take into account all kind of media, including pictures, virtual reality videos, and so on. The ecosystem that Metaverse wants to support are the so-called federated ecosystem, in which there are a set of administrative domains, in which each administrative domain is autonomous. So inside an administrative domains, the rules are dictated by the domain administrator, even if the cooperation among the different administrative domains is how to say, agreed and defined according to a common set of rules. Each users register on a specific administrative domain, and also digital assets are uploaded or created within a specific administrative domain, even if the ecosystem make possible to have a distributed access to the different digital assets, the possibility to exchange or to use digital asset on one administrative domain to create or enrich them and have them available on another administrative domain. Of course, we need to support the what we call the copyright negotiations, and so to support enforcement of rights on the digital asset, and this in a decentralized way, both for what has to do with discovering and using and managing rights. This both inside a specific administrative domain and across administrative domain. For the rights management, the objective is to be able to handle both the legal and operational aspects that are related to the IPR management, to adopt within a federated ecosystem a common digital rights management model, and also to support the sharing of content, even when you enrich it by preserving the IPR of the original owner of the used content. And to this end, of course, we need to have something that kind of format that is machine readable, and also to be able to represent the rights, to properly manage the storage and registration of this kind of rights, and also to be able to negotiate and manage the content according to the rights that has been defined. We know that IPR management is a complex matter. For example, because the law is organized by geographic regions, and so it's not possible to find, to say, conditions and agreements that are valid everywhere. Additionally, the rights management has a lot of gray areas, because the wording of contracts or clauses is relevant. There could be a lot of options, clauses, and so on. And so we have to take into account that the legal prose is still required. And additionally, there are specific issues that are related to the digital asset. For example, related with how to identify digital asset. For example, if you change the coding, for example, you just have an initial picture in JPEG format, you change it to the PNG format. Is this a different digital asset, or is the same digital asset? And so if we identify the digital asset, for example, using an hash code, just changing the coding will change the hash code, and so the identifier will no longer identify the right digital asset. Other possibilities are related, for example, to change the format, so having a photo in different sizes, which, of course, if you use hash codes for identifying this kind of digital asset, will not work properly. Or even if you use, for example, the IPFS identifier or other kind of file identifier, this will not change. And another additional issue is related to the identification of a near duplicate or partial duplicate of digital assets. For example, if you, within a video, are reusing another video, how can a system identify the embedded digital asset in the embedding one? And so these are all issues that needs to be addressed if we want to guarantee that digital assets are properly managed. Other issues are related to if IPR is related to the digital asset by themselves or the right that a specific subject has on a digital asset, and how, for example, blockchain can help in managing and addressing those issues. Okay, I will not spend the word regarding non-fungible token. It was clarified by the previous interesting presentations. Just to add that a token and also the non-fungible tokens are actually managed by smart contracts. A smart contract is a simple piece of software that is executed on the blockchain. So it's nothing more than, let me say, traditional software that has the characteristic to be executed on the blockchain, and so to have the guarantee that given some input, the outcomes produced by the software will be the same within the whole blockchain, which guarantees that the right execution of the smart contract. But contrary to the name, the smart contract is not smart and neither a contract in the legal meaning. And by the way, for example, if there are bugs in a smart contract, as for any kind of software, you still have this kind of issues on the blockchain. So everything that is related to a token is managed through a smart contract. So the token creation, transferring a token, and so on, it's always performed thanks to the use of the smart contracts that are related to the token. Okay, as I was already explained, that the NFT usage is exploding, and currently the NFT are essentially used to represent assets and specifically digital assets, so even physical assets, and so to essentially manage the asset ownership, which doesn't exhaust the needs related to the right management related to digital assets. So the approach, the needs that we have in Mediaverse is just to be able to cover more extensively the legal aspects and not only the operative ones. To have the possibility to check if a given behavior is compliant to what has been stated in contracts or licenses, the possibility to support transfer of rights, payment, auditability, traceability, and to provide an environment that's easy to use for end users. So the approach that we choose is not to manage the digital asset by itself, but to manage the user rights on digital assets. And so this is achieved combining two elements. One is the so-called smart legal contracts that are contracts in the traditional meaning of the term. So you can have clauses, conditions, and so on. But the smart legal contracts is structured in a way that can be also processed by specific IT software. And we are referring to the Accord project both for the environment for creating the templates for contracts and for checking compliance of conditions, for example, with what is formalized in a contract. In addition to the smart legal contracts that covers the legal aspects, we have also smart contracts that are used essentially for kind of objectives. One is the notarization of the rights. So we use a smart contract to notarize that a given contract and agreement has been reached among a given subject related to a specific digital asset. To, of course, have the possibility to perform audit and tracing of what's happening to rights managed by the smart contracts, and also to support the transfer of rights and payments that are related to the rights. Okay, just to exemplify our approach, we reason in terms of what we call triplets, starting from the root triplets that is associated to the ownership right. So each time you create a digital asset on the Mediaverse platform and you ask to formalize the existence and the usability of this digital asset, a root triplet is created which identify who is the owner of the ownership as an ownership deed that states the ownership deed is a smart legal contract, so it can have all the structure and the conditions that a normal contract can have. And so this triplet will identify the owner, the ownership deed, and the digital, the Mediaverse digital asset. And so this will constitute the root triplet. And if you, for example, have contracts that allow another subject to distribute your digital asset or to, for example, reuse it for other kind of usage, you have additional triplets that formalize this kind of agreement, identifying who are the subject involved, what are the conditions. So you always have a smart legal contract. Of course, there is still the identification of the digital asset that is involved, and this can, if the contractual condition envisage this kind of arrangement, you can have an hierarchy of this kind of arrangement. So at the end, what we manage are these Mediaverse triplets, in which each triplet formalizes the right that one of our subjects own regarding a digital asset. There we manage, of course, also the relationships between the triplets if you have subordinate agreements. And each triplet is associated to a smart legal contract that, for example, is the ownership deed for the root triplet. Otherwise, it can be other kind of a contract. And the smart legal contract can clearly defines the legal aspects as traditional contracts. And we have one or more smart contracts that on the one end is used to represent the right. So this is the notarization of the rights. So you have something that states that the given subject has a given right on a digital asset. The smart contract could also represent and manage the ownership of shares of the represented rights. So, for example, the ownership of a book can be shared between two authors, and we can also represent this kind of shared ownership on the blockchain. Of course, the smart contract can support the transfer of ownership shares, as well as to support the management of revenues that are tied to the represented rights. Okay, this is a apparently complex picture in which we try to represent how on the blockchain the smart contracts are arranged. You have on the upper left corner the smart contract representing the ownership deed for a given digital asset. Here on the left side, you have, for example, a smart contract that represents the distribute right on the digital asset, and this smart contract has a link to the previous contract, so we can always able to reconstruct the dependencies and have the possibility to check the compatibilities of actions and so on. Here, for example, you have another smart contract that represents the right to use, for example, the play right for an end user for a song. And even in this case, you have a link to, for example, the smart contract that represents the distribution by a recording company. On the other side, we have these pink smart contracts that represent how the value, the payment has to be managed between the owners of the rights. In the smart contract, as you can see here, for example, the ownership rights for the digital asset represented in the smart contract is split between Alice and Bob with different shares. And while, for example, the distribution right is fully owned by Reuters, even if, for example, the smart contract that manages the split of the revenues can have different arrangements. So, for example, here in the middle of the picture, we have a digital a smart contract that states that the revenues must be split 70% to the owner, so to Reuters, and 30% have to go to the parent smart contract dealing with the revenue splitting. And so in this case, the 30% will be split 80% to Alice and 20% to Bob. So this is the kind of arrangement that we are able to manage in Metaverse, and having the possibility in this way to fully support, for example, transferability of rights ownership, as well as the payment of revenues and so on. These yellow boxes here highlight some token standards. Usually, the non-fungible tokens are represented using the ERC 721 standard, but this kind of standard currently doesn't support having the possibility to split the ownership, and so for these purposes, we use the usual ERC20 standard that is used for fungible token, which we set constraints, for example, on the kind of unit that which can be split the ownership, for example, just to have the possibility to split the ownership in 100 pieces, and so to just have the possibility to manage 100% of ownership freely by the user owning the specific share of the token. These things that seems quite complex actually is managed internally by the Mediaverse node, and so the user doesn't see the complexity that is behind and that is reported on the blockchain. So for the end user, it only sees, for example, when you create a new digital asset, you can choose the kind of ownership deed that you prefer in case you have to reach an agreement with another subject. You can choose the kind of the conditions that have to be reported in the contract, and the Mediaverse node will automatically create the smart legal contracts and the associated smart contracts. Using the blockchain gives us the possibility to manage all of this stuff in a distributed way, so that even if in Mediaverse each administrative domain is autonomous, but the Mediaverse ecosystem has the visibility of the complete scenarios, and so all the kind of smart contracts that are involved, even if each administrative domain has full control on the smart contract that he has created. For example, the administrative domain could kill an ownership deed in case we discover that the claimant right actually doesn't exist. And so this is the kind of arrangement that we are able to manage behind the scene, because on the user, on the front end, the user doesn't see the complexity that is behind. Okay, I came just to the conclusion. What we will appreciate from JPEG standardization. So to have the possibility to have identifiers that doesn't depend on the coding, so way to identify a digital asset, media digital asset, in a way that is dependent on the actual content of the digital asset, and not on, for example, the name of the file, or if the coding is a JPEG or other kind of coding, if you change the size of the picture and so on. Help in enhancing trust on using and buying the digital asset. At the moment, every kind of NFT, how to say, chooses its own meta information to be reported in the NFT, and so this makes the things quite complex from an interoperability point of view. So, for example, our NFTs will have some data elements that are not present in other NFTs, and so if you are looking for this NFT on the Ethereum, you will not be able to catch the full meaning of the information that we report. And so having some more standardized elements to be used for representing digital asset on the blockchain and even on contractual matter will help a lot. Okay, this is the conclusion of my presentation. Thanks for your attention. Hoping I was clear.
Thank you very much, Domenico. Well, your last slide for sure opens a lot of discussion points. Generally, I think everything really was along the type of things that I think the audience wanted to see in terms of what are the technologies that are around or being explored to deal or to use NFTs for various type of applications, especially when there is media involved. What I'm going to do is to first stop the recording